Welcome, SunSpotter. Are you ready for relevant news, reports, information, and a splash of entertaining ideas based on real estate? You have arrived in a great space. Here is C. Chambers, licensed real estate sales and content creator, helping you with the keys to open doors of new opportunities. And now, let's go get them, C.
Hey Sunspotters, welcome to another edition. Sunspot Living. NYC Chambers here, and I'm going to go over the market report. Then we have two articles to cover. One is about peak renting time that's going on this year. This is 2026, and also the pros and cons of condo and co-op rentals. So I hope you enjoyed the intro. Worked pretty hard on that. So let's go.
It's so hard to rent one nowadays.
Welcome to New York City.
All right, let's shrink myself down here so you can see what's going on with this rental situation here. Welcome to the Sunspotters and Find. Introducing Find. They just had a rebrand with Level Spire in Oxford. Beautiful information, lots of great networking experiences. There's going to be a lot of connections going on. New things are on the horizon. How real estate moves in the city. With different companies, they're consolidating, and we're getting things. We're getting more resources for all sides. So let's go to it. This is the rentals from Manhattan, January 2026. Okay. And it's looking stable as before. We got $6,287 as a listed rent, average listed rent. And this is important as a landlord if you're doing for rent by owner, because you want to make sure that your inventory is competitive with the market, of course. But some people in some places actually go over the price of the rent, with the rental. In this competitive nature, it can take away from your place being rented very soon. Taking the days off the market. So $6,287 was the average listed rate. The median listed rent, myself over here, is $4,975. A great contrast from $6,287, and you're going to see how the rent drops come into effect because of this. All right, too many vacancies can cost a lot of money. You want some type of entity into your place, so some money is flowing and you can include it into your income. That's the main thing of this. So let's get it. Well, the rental inventory as of right now is 6,488 total rent inventory. Last month it was 7,244. Now understand that number, right? The new listings is 2,391 new listings. The rent drops, as I stated before, 2,477 rent drops. That's significant. That's very significant with the comparison that we had earlier. People are starting to see this number right here, the average listed rent. People are, please come down off of that. So the average right now is around 5,000. Okay. Then you have 446 taken off the market And those are the people, those are the ones that we're going to have to, as agents, as people looking for negotiations and, tenants that, they want to go on their own. They're going to look for these taken off the market. Why were they taken off the market? Is there any way we can get them back on at a renegotiated rate? I mean, that would solve the problem on the tenant side and solve the problem on the landlord side. So make sure your paperwork is correct so you can have that type of leverage, and we can move
I'll let you get back to your paperwork then.
forward from there. The amount of rented properties, $1,357. 1,357 rentals, and the average rent per square feet is $91. Just to show you what's going on there. It barely moved actually from last month. So, we're in the middle of January. Some leases are up, so you want to look at the lease breaks as well. So we'll do that for you when you come into using our services, and if you can afford the time and the patience that takes to work with you. All right. Now we go on to another borough that is hot for people. Brooklyn.
I don't think I can afford a place in Brooklyn.
In a second. Hope you're doing right out there. It's right after the holidays and the resolutions and everything like that, and that's for all units. So we're going to go into 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom also, right? Let me go to Manhattan first. I'm sorry I did that for you. Let's go into Manhattan. Finish that up, right? 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms. Now, the reason I wanted to do that, get it out the way, those are the most requested, right? And I want you to see how things change. This is all sizes, right? So let's go into it. 1 bedroom, the average listed price is $5,029. The median listed rent price is $4,900. So roughly around $5,000, like I was saying before. This is for the 1 bedroom. The new listings, there's 1,057 new 1 bedroom listings in Manhattan. The renting inventory as of now, 2,728 on the rental. And there you see, last time it was 2,985. We got 1,208 rent drops. Okay, that's something that's significant. We would have to talk to these people, see where we can negotiate. Remember, they wanted to get around $5,029. It's usually coming out $4,900. So you can save a couple of $100 here and there. Taking off the market, 200. Rental properties, 571. 2 bedrooms have been in demand for a little bit as well, so we're going to go into that. Average price listed $7,186. The median listed rent $6,500. All right. There's been 1,642 in rental inventory. 574 are new. 385 have had a rent drop, so they're asking for a little less, and it's out there so we can actually negotiate. And as you see, it fell from 2,232 last year around this time. And taken off the market was 110. 2 bedroom apartments, all right? Rented out was 344, so there's plenty of work out there. There's plenty of work out there. There's room for leverage. Okay, we want to know why these 110 were taken off the market. 2 bedrooms in Manhattan. Okay, let's go to Brooklyn, like I said, what do you want to do?
It's gonna be Brooklyn.
All right, Brooklyn, all sizes. We're dealing with average listed rent $4,497. The median listed rent $4,031. Now, see, it hasn't changed too much. All right, hasn't changed too much, and we have a total inventory of 3,387 units. Okay, it's actually increased since last year. The new listings amount is 1,365 new listings, 441 rent drops. So it's modest. It's a little less than Manhattan, of course, but you have a robust amount of inventory. So, there's many units out there that we can search through and sort through and see if we can get a good price for those. 350 were taken off the market. Okay, 741 have been rented, and the average square foot for rent is $71. All right, so things are working in a conservative style market. Nothing that jumps out too drastically. They do have to consider that the price is up there, and of course they ask for 40 times the rent. We can make some exceptions. There are some flexible options available. If you contact me, we can walk through it. Just wanted to let you know. Here's the one bedroom post. Okay. The average listed price is $3,946. The median listed rent price is $3,933. So we're around that $4,000 cap right there. As I just said, it hasn't changed much. So you're looking at a $4,000 for one bedrooms. There's 1,406 units available. Okay, 559 new listings. We'll get into that. And when you go to the average online sites, you're going to be bombarded with a lot of the same listings, a lot of listings that are stale. They've been they haven't been removed, so you have to call up the point of contact and make sure that it's still an active listing. Of course, sometimes they'll tell you, no, I just didn't have a chance to get it off, or I've talked to the online support and they haven't removed it yet. These things happen, and that's why the follow-up is that much more important. Okay, and then there's other sites that you may not be aware of as a consumer. As a customer looking and sorting out, where your listings are that fit your criteria. You may not have a certain resource that's available for you to find out other listings out there that are not readily available online. So this is why talking to someone that has those resources can really benefit you, put you in a better space, and beat out the competitive advantage. You get a competitive advantage over others searching with the same criteria, and it's ready to go. All right, 559 new listings, 233 rent drops. So that's not too bad. Not too bad. So everything's online with the market price, and 143 have been taken off market, which is not bad as well. It's like everybody knows that $4,000 is the play for a one bedroom in Brooklyn, right? 288 have been rented, so you have a great deal of inventory still available. Okay, let's go to the two bedroom. Right at $5,000. That's the same $5,000 as a one bedroom in Manhattan, two bedrooms in Brooklyn. All right, so of course, it depends on your commute. You may want to change things around. You know, if it favors you, you might want to move outside into Brooklyn and leave a little earlier, or make sure you have some means of transportation that's going to get you where you need to go. That supersedes traffic, supersedes any train delays and that sort. So it's $5,000, but the median listed rent, which usually is the rent that is actually at work, is $4,917. All right, it's up about $400 from last year. So these are the things you have to consider. You got 1,153 two bedrooms. It's up from 981 last year. 471 new listings. Okay, you got 86 rent drops and 137 taken off the market. That's the ones we're going to be looking for. You come and we'll talk about it. 238 have been rented, and that is the two bedrooms in Brooklyn. Congratulations, Brooklyn. You're doing pretty good. Everything is all right. Let's go on to Queens. Oh, they don't like Queens like that. There we go. Well, Queens and then the Bronx, okay? All right, all sizes, right? In Queens, we have the average listed rent at $3,911. The median listed rent, $3,600. Okay, everything is pretty even. There was a dip around September for the Queens. Queens is usually, the interesting thing is the commute in Queens. Depending on where you're going to live, the commute is very important. And then there's also lower lands, like the valleys of Queens, that can't interrupt the apartment search and even sales, because if it's a high level of snow or heavy rainpour, those things are significant with flooding. So one thing we look at is also the environmental impacts that it has on the people that we're servicing. Some people are not mobile and they need to be on higher ground, so we want to look for that as well. Those little nuances can affect every decision, so take heed of that. As far as the inventory, it's 1,414 total rental inventory, with 488 new listings, 287 rent drops, and 137 taken off the market. All right, and you also have 207 rented properties of all sizes in Queens. All right, let's go into the one bedroom. Now, a lot of people have been asking for one bedrooms in Queens. This is the breakdown. You got 3,539 as the average listed rent. Then the median listed rent that it goes for, $3,468. Not too much, maybe like $100, $120 difference. Okay. New listings, rental inventory, 705. There's 248 new listings, which is great. 186 rent drops. They're not too bad, so everything is basically on par as far as what the price should be, and people are understanding that. And only 65 were taken off the market, and so that's good. They just might need to reconfigure their price, and also, reach out to an agent or two and try to market their rental a little bit better. Okay. and the rented properties are 153. All right, that's for the one bedroom. Two bedrooms also in demand, significantly less. Right, we were talking $5,000 for a one bedroom in Manhattan. Now we're talking about $4,761 for a two bedroom in Queens. Give it up to Queens. You know, and that's the average listed price. The median listed rent is $4,589. There's 426 in rental inventory, 128 new listings, and 41 rent drops. And you have 45 of them were taken off the market. Okay, 93 were rented. So you got a good mix going on. If you get those 45, or at least half of those, 20 more, put them on the market, you got 148 new listings. So having all the paperwork correct, having the leverage with your income, and you know the financials correct as well, we're going to make a great case for putting certain apartments on the map. Switch it up a little bit. There we go. I like that layout right there. It's better. Now the two bedroom. Now we go to the Bronx. Bronx County. All right. These are just the hard numbers. I use the OLR because they generate through several different sources and boil it down. Another thing you can go on is Brick Underground, which is great. You know, just showing you a little bit of the tools of the trade. Of course, the Bronx, all size, $2,887 for the average listed rent. The median listed rent is $2,775. You got 366 rental inventory, and the Bronx is high impacted. It's very concentrated. You know, so a lot of these places don't move a lot, and when they do, you know, it's at a certain price point, so everybody flocks to them. Okay, 157 new listings. You got 80 rent drops and 56 taken off the market. All right, 49 properties have been rented. That's for all sizes. Let's get into the one bedroom. Again, about $2,500, $2,600, $2,593. Average listed rent, median listed rent, $2,468. Okay, that's down from last year. Hasn't moved much, which is good. Everybody's on the same boat, same accord. 177 rental units available. 79 are new listings. Okay, we want to find out how many days they are on the market. You know, follow up. Make sure they have the code and everything, and you know, make the push to fill them up with some great tenants like yourself. 52 rent drops and 24 taken off the market. This is for one bedrooms in the Bronx. 28 have been rented so far. Now these are low numbers, you know, because like I said, the concentration of the Bronx is interesting. There are some new developments going up, and that's going to play into next month's market pulse. Let's go into the two bedroom. All right, average listed rent $3,285. Median listed rent $3,208. Okay. Again, rental inventory pretty small. $123 rental units. 45 new listings. Only 7 rent drops, because they're more in tune with the median listed rent. You don't have to drop the rent too low. and there's 26 of them taken off market. 14 two-bedroom apartments were rented, and that's that. Hey, you might wonder why I don't cover Staten Island, and it's because it's really far. I usually go into a little bit into Long Island, Nassau County, before I go into Staten Island. There's no slight against Staten Island, but it's very enclosed, and like I said, it's very far. As far as the commute, I like to schedule it around the main four boroughs. I can go as far as Inwood. I've gone to Hudson County before, and as low as Coney Island in the south of Brooklyn, and out towards Queens, like I said, into Nassau and Suffolk counties. But Staten Island is its own place. It's laid out the way it is that will benefit people that are in particularly inclined to do Staten Island work. So, I commend them, I appreciate them, and I would love to do borough-based business with them, but that's just not my thing. If you like to have a Staten Island listing, market analysis, or even go see some of the places, put it in the comments, let me know, or also email me, for a special request, and we talk to it, and I might consider it. Also, I want to know from your perspective, why do you think the Bronx is not as prevalent right now, price-wise, or even with the inventory that's available? If you happen to see how everything was broken down, you see they have less numbers. Why do you think that is? Let me know. Send me an email. Also, put it in the comment section. And thank you for your attention. If you want Staten Island, we can do that another time. But we only concentrate with the 4 boroughs that are actively in demand from many customers in New York City within the boroughs. But anything extra, you get in touch with me, Chambers at finerealestate.com, and I get those numbers out to you. But let's move on, if I can. To this article right here, because 85% of New York City, it was 80 to 85% of New York City are co-op apartments, and they have a specific, well, each one has their specific requirements to get into the building. And we're going to see that in this article, and the investment in a condo is a little bit different. Of course, you're going to see what the benefits are with that as being a renter, and you want to factor these in when it comes down to making your decision, or either going to regular apartment buildings or even the nicer system. Okay, pros and cons of renting a New York City condo or co-op. You can find it here in Brick Underground. Jennifer White-Carp is the author. Look for a building that allows long-term renters so that you can stay put. Very necessary. And you'll need board approval. I talked to somebody just recently who was a former board president, and she was telling me, briefly about some of the experiences that happened, some of the anxiety that not just the tenant may have, but also the board. Everybody has their own personalities, and they come into effect when it comes to this point of contact and you're meeting these people. They actually interview your pets as well. If you have any, this is, interesting. Okay, it can slow down your application. It can slow your application process down. All right. Then she goes into when she rented out a studio apartment in Murray Hill, of all places, which is great. That East 34th Street area. Got into a disagreement with her upstairs neighbor about noise. Okay, so this is something that's anybody has rented in New York City know New York has a vibe. So you also know that sometimes somebody's playing the music too loud during the, during the celebration, or there may be some stomping and lots of mini feet going across the top of your head. You get the broom, you try to bang upstairs, and you don't want to do all that. Everybody should be on point and on code for what happens. And yeah, when you celebrate, there's going to be times where everything is, a little loud and boisterous and stuff like that. Try not to be a stick in the mud, but yeah, everybody should be considerate of people's different lifestyle choices, and having calm is a beautiful thing. Peace and calm. Got up with her clumping around over my head one night. Sounded like she was wearing high-heel boots on hardwood floors. I banged on my ceiling with the broom handle, like I just said. I didn't even see this, to get her to be quieter. She let me know she didn't appreciate being told what she could do in her own apartment. She came downstairs and yelled at me. The kicker was that while she was yelling at the top of her lungs, she made a point of saying that she was just a renter. Not her, but the one she was yelling at. She was just a renter. She was going to complain to the board about it. See, that's going to start problems. That's one of the cons of being in the co-op building. But in the light of day, we calmed down, passed things up. I didn't think she complained to anyone, but that was the only unpleasant accident I experienced as a renter in a co-op building. In many ways, it was very nice to rent. The building had a living super. It was responsive. It was very clean and well run. Had no complaint other than the boot-wearing neighbor upstairs. That's funny. The boot-wearing neighbor. That's funny. In fact, brokers had told Brick Underground that renting in the New York City condo or co-op is often a way to get a nice apartment with higher-end finishes and appliances in a better sense of community. This is true, but how much of a task it is to get in. There are a number of pitfalls that you should be aware of before you sign a lease as a renter in a co-op or condo. You may love your apartment only to find out that you cannot renew your lease because the owner has maxed out the number of years they are permitted to rent out their apartment. So you got to find out that. Now, how many years are left before you're at the max where you can't rent the apartment out anymore? And it's usually a 2 to 5 year thing. So you want to consider that before you sign anything. Okay, let's go into a couple more. Everybody knows your name. I mean, this is a community. You're going to meet people maybe near the lounge, the seating area, when speaking with and working with the doorman, when you're picking up your packages on the elevator, different things like that. Common areas. That's when you're going to meet a lot of people. Yeah, hosting social gatherings for the tenants through the huge lounge spaces. Get a better value. The cost, she mentioned the maintenance, the responsive living super. Things get attended to quickly. All right. The approval process can take longer and the application fees are higher. But if you aren't in a rush to get approval, you can authorize the fees over several years, or more often than not, you're going to get a better value. Application fees for rentals are capped at $20, but condos and co-ops can charge higher fees. I've seen some $5.85, $8.95 non-refundable. It's real out there. It's real. The trick is to find a building that allows longer-term renters. Many have a limit to the number of years someone can rent an apartment in the building. When you're leasing a condo or co-op, you're usually leasing from an individual owner rather than from a large corporation, a corporate owner developer. For that reason, he said, a vacancy hurts a small landlord a lot more, so the asking rent is a lot more reasonable. That's the key right there. So you want to make sure who's backing the building and if you can get involved in that. and that as an asset. You will live in a well-maintained building. Covered that already. You may be to buy your apartment, and she did. All right. We got into the tip with the neighbor who was already in the process of buying the studio. She was lucky because the owners gave her the heads up that they were thinking of selling. So you're right on the edge of renting and buying, which is a great option, and then you can return the favor once you get your equity, or say you outpace the rent, and you're looking to be an owner, and you have that choice. Initially, my response was to start looking for somewhere else to live because I was 30 years old, didn't have a lot of savings, like none. But a family member, her sister, convinced her to buy. It made a lot of sense. Knew the building well. The board knew her as a good tenant. So all the stars lined up. Was able to make it happen. Wrote a detailed offer letter to the owners who hadn't stepped foot in the apartment in several years. So it was like, this is yours now. Outlining the problems with the apartment and convinced them to lower the price because you're right there in the thick of it and you know exactly what needs to be done. And exactly what's happening. They say, okay, this is our time. All right. Cons. They're not on equal footing with the owners and the shareholders. As the first experience when she was a tenant, even though she had every right to complain, if the other tenant, her neighbor with the high heels on the hard floor, was to push the argument, chances are, and of course if she was an owner, and she is, the tenant, the renter, would have been pushed out. The only let's go into it. As a renter in the co-op building, as benign as it was, isn't an outlier. Owners and renters have different rights and even fees. Sachs called this a class system, and said tenants are on the bottom. Owners and shareholders tend to hold themselves in higher regard than they do the building renters. The thing is that they have invested more in the building. And tenants, on the other hand, are considered less invested. So yeah, that could have been an issue. It is very rare that condominium buildings do this, Hughes said. It also been my experience that condominium owners who are acting as landlords tend to be more hands-off and laissez-faire, whereas cooperative landlords tend to be stricter, such as conducting inspections throughout the tenancy and having the building staff keep an eye on the tenants. Okay. So somebody's babysitting all the time. Timing is not always on your side. Okay. This is when it comes down to you wanting to rent a co-op building. Let's say you have maybe a month to get in, and you have to wait for the board interview to happen. That could take it could take a lot of time. You can't just move in like that, and it could be worrisome. The paperwork that you have to get, you're going to have to scramble for that. Hopefully you have it all together. I like to put things all in one PDF file and let them have it as well, let the customer have it. Look it over. If you got to add something to it, add something to it. But when it's time to move, you just have that file together. It makes a lot of sense, and it saves a lot of steps. Just like when purchasing a co-op, the board can reject the rental application without providing a reason, which can be very frustrating. Very big thing that when I had that conversation that she mentioned, it's really it could be for no reason at all. Well, there's going to be a reason, right? But they won't tell you. That it's frustrating because you wouldn't know where to start, where to begin. You got to make sure your shoes are tied, make sure you wear the right color. If you have a tick, you want to. What can actually, disrupt these people from getting you into their building. I don't know. But that's that. Jennifer Whitecarp is the author. Thank you for your story.